Good morning, everybody. Can I first of all say how grateful I am for the invite? It's an absolute pleasure to be able to speak to you. Now, this is my first opportunity to speak at the Napo conference as Chief Inspector of Probation. I'm hoping I'll get more invitations in the future, but maybe you can decide that after you've heard me speak. First of all, I would like to pay tribute to the work you do. Now, the probation officer's work can be thankless, and it often doesn't get the attention and the applause it deserves from the media, from politicians, and from the public. So first of all, I'd like to say a huge thank you for the work you do. It is work of critical importance. And I think the recent changes to SDS 40, has put it in the public eye much more than it ever has before. And I think we have to make the most of that opportunity to ensure that we can perhaps get decisions that would improve the system for the future. The work of probation is crucial to reducing reoffending, turning people's lives around, and keeping communities safer. Probation, I think, is one of the few areas of public service where you can genuinely say you have the ability to change lives for the better. Every day, the work of probation makes a difference. 3 decades working in criminal justice has demonstrated to me that an effective probation service can reduce reoffending, keep the public safer, reduce future victims. I have to say, the scale of your work is astonishing. The probation service is currently managing nearly 250,000 cases. That's nearly 3 times the number of people that are in our prisons. And of course, we know our prisons are at capacity, but it's 3 times the number. Every week, around 1,000 people are released from custody into your supervision. You currently supervise somewhere over 160,000 people in the community, including over 100,000 people on community orders or suspended sentence orders, and you're managing over 60,000 prisoners on licence and planning, of course, for the release of more than that. And the SDS 40 changes have placed even greater pressure on you. I know that you are under unprecedented pressure, which means you're not able at times to make the impact we would all want. And alongside those caseload pressures, you have faced massive change. As is clear from our recent inspection reports, the current performance of the probation service is hamstrung. It's falling short of its full potential because of a mismatch between the enormous caseload, the lack of resources, and the significant learning and development needs of people that are newly recruited to the service. But of course, your success is not just about probation. Achieving good results depend on information sharing from other agencies, having stable accommodation, and ultimately it's not the job of the probation service to find accommodation for everybody leaving prison. But of course, sometimes you are left holding the baby. It's also about having the right support services in the community, in particular drugs, alcohol, and mental health support, which we know underpins so much offending. My honest assessment at the moment is that our probation service has too few staff with too little experience overall, managing too many cases. And I know that's a difficult message sometimes for government, but I think it's the truth. When I go out on inspection, I sometimes see PDUs that have got 50% staffing off of vacancies. So how can you deliver an effective service when you're suffering that much staff shortages? And there is, of course, a strong link then between the level of staffing and the performance. And whilst, of course, it's positive that more probation officers are being recruited, this will not fix all of the issues in the short term. It's crucial that the challenges we see in our inspections are addressed. So whilst I applaud the recent recruitment activity, I think every probation officer that we recruit is potentially the gold for the future. I think retaining experience in the probation service is like a pot of gold. One of the things that I say, and I said to journalists recently, is, if we could have found an extra 500 probation officers to be in post with experience before the SDS 40 changes, what would that have felt like on the ground? Because instead, our probation officers were carrying some of those burdens. Because there is more to be done, particularly around recruitment and retention, ensuring that the right people are in the roles with the right support and the right training. And of course, we're recruiting people, but are they staying? With a modern workforce in particular, how do you ensure the people that might have previously stayed in the profession for 30 or 40 years, are they going to be here in 5 years? Are they going to be here in 10 years? How do we ensure that we get into people that are coming into the probation service, the passion that means they stay with the service and can change lives in the future? Our current thematic inspection that's underway on recruitment, retention and training, I can't even say it, will explore these issues further and hopefully shine a light on what is working and what isn't. Now, I have been Chief Inspector of Probation since March of this year. I've got to say, my reports have made for difficult reading. I've read every single one of those reports. I've tried to find some positive things. I've tried to pull out things where the probation service is doing some fantastic work. But also, I have to say, I'm an eternal optimist. It's one of my biggest, problems. I always think the world can improve, but the recent reports, I think, have made for very difficult reading. Every inspection report that I've published since I joined the role has either been inadequate or requires improvement. But it's important to be clear, that's not a comment on individuals, it's a comment on the challenges the probation services face and the need for action. And I think it's vital that I do not shy away from delivering those important messages to HMPPS and to ministers. My inspectorate continue to identify where improvements need to be made, and we're seeing the improvements that are specifically needed around the quality of risk of harm work, public protection work, information sharing for domestic abuse and child safeguarding, and ensuring that that information is used effectively. One of the things that we see all the time, particularly with newly recruited members of staff, is they may get the information, but they don't perhaps have the experienced colleagues to call upon to help them on the decisions that might need to be made. Now, whilst staff are undoubtedly willing, do they have enough time? Do they have the training? Do they have the experience? Do we need better tools, better national protocols to make information sharing easier? I'm also acutely aware of the need to maintain morale. One of the things that I hope I can be as Chief Inspector of Probation, as well as holding people to account, is be the #1 cheerleader of the probation service and the potential it has to do good. I will shine a light on effective practice. Despite our difficult findings, we always find good practice on our inspections, and we see excellent work in some areas. And where I find good practice, I will applaud it. We've already seen impressive work in some areas, particularly around, for example, women's services and young adults. And I think they highlight the potential of probation to do better if we can get the model working better in the future. We've also seen some really good work around victim support as well across the regions. Now, I believe it's essential to highlight this work to ensure we continue to draw examples of good practice so that the work of probation is not hidden in the shadows. I would now like to move on to talk about some of the work that the Inspectorate is planning. We're now currently in the middle of planning for the start of our approved premises inspection. That is an area that has never been subject to proper scrutiny. I think it's an important area that we highlight. We've completed our external consultations and we're doing some pilot work currently in the hope that we can start that programme in the spring. Now, of course, there's always pressure on approved premises places, but of course, the SDS 40 changes have placed further pressure on that environment. So we need to ensure we understand how that's to work, but also hopefully make the case for more investment in that area. Towards the end of the year, we will be consulting on our next thematic inspection programme and future research priorities. I'm looking forward to potentially doing some inspection work around drugs, I think, which is an area which perhaps hasn't received the attention that it should. We're keen to hear ideas on where the Inspectorate should focus its work. I'd also like to highlight the Inspectorate's new Equity, Diversity and Inclusion strategy, which was recently launched on our website, got picked up and criticised in the newspaper as us trying to be too right on. I'm not going to apologise for the fact that actually our inspection should, of course, take account of those points. Our mission statement sets out our commitment to driving forward positive change in equity, diversity and inclusion. We've set out an action plan on how we deliver on our objectives. I want to conclude by talking about the SDS 40 changes. I have publicly praised frontline probation officers for their hard work preparing for these changes. I've described this in the media as heroic, and I'm happy to repeat those words here. However, whilst I've commended the efforts that have been made, I've also highlighted repeatedly the impact of the additional pressure on the probation service. I believe that the pressure on the probation service is just as severe as that on our prisons. It is essential that the impacts of the SDS 40 scheme on the probation service are monitored and properly managed. We have inevitably seen some issues, for example, around accommodation and tagging. But it's important to emphasise, I think, that probation did the very best it could in very difficult circumstances with not the amount of time that people would have wanted. Going forward, the Inspectorate will play a key role in monitoring how the SDS 40 scheme is working, and we will shine a line on what is working and what isn't. But with a new government comes new opportunities. As part of the sentencing review, I will be encouraging government to look at what we are currently asking the probation service to do. Are there aspects of its work that could be removed to give practitioners additional time rather than stretching them to unsustainable levels? My concern is if we spread ourselves too thinly, we will never deliver the quality of service that we need. So that may require some difficult choices to be made on where the limited resources should be focused. But I do think there is an opportunity if the right choices are made. Good probation practice helps to keep communities safe and reduces reoffending. The probation service has a vital role to play in the supervision of the most complex, difficult, and damaged people. Therefore, it's essential you have the resources you need to match that workload. We know from the evidence that having a place to live, the opportunity for employment, help with drugs, alcohol, mental health problems, and support in the community, and sometimes actually a friend, are key to reducing reoffending. If we have better resources, better support, a more confident probation service, we will see better supervision in the community, greater sense of confidence in community sentences, and better outcomes. If we get probation right, we could see better support at the underlying causes of reoffending. Less recall. Recall currently costs us £600 million a year in prison places. If we could break that cycle, how could we reinvest that in the community? You'd see more changed lives and safer communities. So to achieve change, I firmly believe we need to invest more in probation to better manage people in the community and keep the public safe. My inspectorate will continue to work to provide scrutiny and evidence to drive positive change, continuing to shine an independent light, not just on where services need to make improvements, but where we find effective practice and drive change. Thank you for listening. I do hope you invite me back in the future.